It is the Cam Show. It's powered by Rogue Media Sports Network. We are back in studio to recap preseason week 3, and more importantly, the Patriots quarterback battle, if you can call it that, because we're getting mixed signals as to whether we can call it that. Sherrod Maye with some interesting comments on this Monday morning, both to Mike Reese and to the Greg Hill Show on WEEI, because Drake Maye stands out again in this Sunday Night Football matchup against Washington. He goes 13 for 20 for 125 and a touchdown and looked pretty damn good doing it. Played most of the first half. After Jacoby Brissett plays one series, gets absolutely mauled on a sack because the Patriots' offensive line can't block. And now we're getting mixed signals as to whether we could see Drake Maye as early as the week 1 starter. Brissett did hurt his shoulder. It was his throwing shoulder, but he didn't take the pads off. In fact, he was on the sideline in the second half, still in pads. They said it was fine. He could have kept going. But then again, Sherrod Maye telling Mike Reese of ESPN.com, Jacoby may come in here today and say his shoulder's no good. Well, that's different from what we heard last night from the head coach. That's a direct contradiction to what we heard last night. We heard it was no big deal. So I'm not going to get too far down the road on if Jacoby could play or couldn't play. What I will say is this is a true competition, and I would say at this current point, Drake has outplayed Jacoby. Now, in saying that, we have to take in the full body of work going all the way back to the spring and the beginning of training camp. We'll see where we end up, but those are the conversations that will happen here over the next couple of days. If this is a true quarterback competition, it is no longer a competition. Drake Maye has been the better quarterback in camp and in the preseason games. So if that is true, that we come in here clean slate, true competition, the way it was with Cam Newton and Mac Jones, then you're going to have the same result. The kid who just got drafted is going to win. But see, that's where I think he's bullshitting us. Because when you say, well, we have to take into account Jacoby's career, then it's not as much a competition. It's a reputation. And look, I get it. Jacoby has played in the NFL. He's a vet, but he's never been very good in anywhere he's been, to be totally honest. And he looks like a shell of what he used to be in this preseason, which equates to just having a bad quarterback with a bad, what could be the worst offense in the league. If this offensive line could just get their shit together, if this offensive line was just a little bad, if this offensive line was league average, Drake Maye would be your starting quarterback. Of that, I have no doubt at this point. He has looked much better in these games. He has looked calm. He has looked a much better quarterback than the start of camp. I mean, you don't need to be a football scout to see that. His progression throughout these 3 preseason games, just from what we, the fans, have been able to see, is night and day. And from what we could see on the tape from him at North Carolina, you know, all those misses, like he can't even throw the ball into the ocean, all that bad footwork that we heard about throughout his college career, and we heard Bill Belichick talk about the night he was drafted, that was not there anymore. In fact, there was a throw in this game last night that Collinsworth expertly pointed out. Collinsworth is pretty good at doing some analyzing when he's not trying to say how great everybody is. But there's a throw in that 2-minute drill before the half where Drake Maye, his toes are facing upfield middle hash mark, and he's throwing to the outside hash to Javon Baker. And he just an absolute bullet, man. His feet weren't going crazy, but he also showed off his arm talent that we know is there. And there was another one that Collinsworth was talking about where it was a hospital ball. He shouldn't have thrown it, but he was saying, look how tight that window is. Don't throw that. And I'm thinking, don't throw it because it was high and it was between 2 defenders, but he threaded that needle. He threaded it. Couple of deep balls. One of them was just a hair ahead of Javon Baker. Just a little overthrown, not 5 yards overthrown, maybe 1 yard overthrown. And then he throws a deep touchdown pass that gets called back to KJ Osborne, where he's rolling to his left, throwing on the run. It's a BB 40 yards, and it should have been a touchdown. Of course, offensive holding. Who could have saw that coming? But he showed you. I get it. It was a second-string defense for Washington, and it's just the preseason. But in said preseason, when other teams were throwing their twos at you, your starter looked worse than your backup. There is still the issue that if you send the kid out there, he might not recover. This offensive line is probably going to be the worst in the league. His offensive weapons are, if not the worst, among the very worst in the league. And so it feels like you're not even giving the kid the chance if you put him out there right now. But learning under Jacoby Brissett, what's he going to learn there? If we're being honest, what is he going to learn there? He should be the starter week 1. It's not going to happen. And again, it's the offensive line, which is why. That game last night was just an abomination of the positional unit. They sucked. And Leverett, thank God he is not your starting center, but one false hamstring from David Andrews, and he is. 2 botch snaps on the day, and a couple of penalties on the eight penalties on the offensive line in the first half alone. 8 of them. How are you supposed to win a game doing that? And they can't even kick out. City So on the first Drake Maye drive, on the first drive, it was on the Jacoby Brissett series. City So kicks out and runs into his own right tackle, Mike Onwenu, who's not going to be a tackle when the season gets started. He runs into his own right tackle and his running back, 2 guys who were supposed to block the edge rusher, and because of that, Jacoby Brissett gets lit up and might have even gotten hurt on the play because of it. That's because your guard can't kick out. Your starting guard, who started 13 games last year, and then gets hurt later in the game. So as bad as this offensive line is, you'd at least like to have guys out there who have played a little bit, and they might not even have that luxury. Because, oh, by the way, the 3rd-round pick they spent on a guard, he didn't play until the 3rd quarter. He was in there with all the 2s and even some 3s, and it was after a guard got hurt. This is a dire circumstance. Dire. And yeah, you know that for sure when you're saying, boy, you can't get Cole Strange back quick enough, or the other guy, the tackle, who's not any good, so you can move on Onwenu to guard. This is a bad situation. I think that's the reason why you won't see Drake Maye week 1. But even the head coach, Gerard Mayo, who has had some struggles in this camp. With sound bites and who's making the decision-making and all that. Gerard Mayo cannot say for certain who the quarterback's going to be, but it is going to be a bad landscape in this city if you are saying Drake Maye is better than Jacoby Brissett and has played better and has earned a spot, but we're going to play Jacoby Brissett. That is not going to be a good deal for Gerard Mayo. And he's admitted also that he's concerned about this offensive line. No shit, Gerard. It's going to be the worst in the league. They combined for 10 penalties for 157 yards last night. Again, 8 of them in the first half. At least one play where they had 2 committed penalties on the same play from the offensive line. But he's not concerned about the X's and O's. He said, my biggest concern is not the X's and O's of what to do. It's the lack of discipline they showed today. And that's on all of us. That's on me. This is Gerard Mayo saying it. Starts with me. I got to be more diligent in getting those guys about pre-snap penalties. The rest of the coaches have to do the same. Yeah, you do. Because it got to the point where the Patriots committed 3 illegal formations in the first half, where even the ref was clowning them. The ref is saying, illegal formation, once again, the left tackle not lined up right. Once again. We're laughing at them. The broadcast team is laughing at them. The refs are laughing at them. This is a disaster. The only positive of this team has been Drake Maye. On the offensive side, anyway. The only plus on the offensive side of the ball they have had is Drake Maye, and we don't even know if he's going to freaking play. Once again, illegal formation of the offense. Like, that's the shit we used to laugh at for so long. Like, we used to clown these teams for being this bad. That's where the Patriots are at right now. It's going to be a long, long season, man. And we're going to talk some more about this later on in the show and get a little bit of what the expectations are for this team going into the season and what this roster is going to be. Did anyone earn a roster spot last night? I think it might be closer than you think. I really do. But, yeah, when the coach can't tell you who the starter is going to be, that's one thing. But when he also tells you, oh, no, the offensive coordinator makes that call. No, he doesn't. In no NFL team does the offensive coordinator make the call on who the starting quarterback is going to be. None. That's the head coach's job, Gerard. That is your job. Welcome to the big leagues, buddy. This is what you signed up for. Your offensive coordinator is going to split some reps. He is going to tell you what the kid needs to work on. He's going to tell you what the kid has done better in camp. But he doesn't make the call. You do. And you're out here telling us on Monday morning that, yeah, Drake's played better than our starting quarterback. Both of them have gone against a lot of second-team defenses, but it's the starter who's looked worse against second-team defense. Seems like an easy call to me. But when your offensive line can't line up right, they can't block correctly, they can't kick out, they can't do anything right, then how do you put the kid out there? I think that's the main question here. We'll talk about that and more coming up on The Cam Show, powered by Rogue Media Sports Network. Welcome back to The Cam Show, powered by Rogue Media Sports Network. Mike D'Abate of Locked On Patriots. Just a couple Locked On Patriots guys now joining the show after the Pats finish up the preseason slate, look towards the regular season, and look towards that final roster cut down. But, Mike, I'd be remiss if we didn't start with Drake Maye, of course. And he plays most of the first half in that game against Washington last night. Commanders did not play pretty much any of their starters in any unit. But Drake Maye, to me, looked impressive again. What was your takeaway from that game in Landover last night?
Yeah, there's no question about it, Cam. He looked very impressive. 5 of 6, 71 yards, and a touchdown pass, 18 yards to Kevin Harris. You've got to be impressed by what you've seen from this kid. That's a good stat line for a single drive, considering he did it with 2 bungled snaps along the way, recovering from that and really finding a way to make things happen. But another thing to also consider is that Drake had a couple of opportunities to make things happen in subsequent drives. A couple of breakdowns along the line negated a touchdown, a very nice pass to KJ Osborne, which would have been a great touchdown. That would have left him with 2 on the night. As far as I'm concerned, he does have that because that really wasn't under his control to be able to do it. If anything, he made something happen when there wasn't anything to happen. So very impressed by what I've seen with the kid. His eyes are starting to align with his motion. That's something that I know Alex Van Pelt and Gerard Mayo have really been trying to hone in on. His feet work, I think, has been much better and much improved. So, yeah, if you're wondering whether or not this kid is pro-level ready, I think he's ready for it.
And the head coach did kind of allude to that. We're going to get to that in a minute. But looking at, some of his performance last night, what stuck out to me, Mike, is you mentioned the bungled snap. I mean, this offensive line, it is an offensive offensive line to watch.
Absolutely.
And the first drive, Drake Maye's out there. They're inside the 20. First snap, bungled snap. He's going backwards. And then what I thought was, you can say it's preseason and just whatever, house money, but what I thought was a good sign of confidence was they're inside the 5 or so after that, and he's dropping back and passing from the end zone on that very next play. And I thought that showed a lot of confidence. And Tirico talked about this on the broadcast about, do you let them score so you can see Drake Maye in a 2-minute situation? And you pretty much did see him in a 2-minute situation. And, I mean, the progress from what the fans have gotten to see over these 3 games is really remarkable, no? I mean, if you're saying he's ready for week 1, that might be another issue. But from what we saw at the beginning of camp to what we saw last night, that looks like a different quarterback.
He's absolutely a different quarterback. And I think a good point to remember with a lot of this, Cam, is that the New England Patriots right now, the way they're situated, this is a situation where he's playing in a much different type of scenario than he played in UNC. Yeah. He's running an outside zone type of offense. He's leading with his left foot out of the shotgun. He spent all his time reading with his right, always had to kind of make those off-script plays in order to make things happen. This is more of a deliberate plotting offense that Alex likes to run. But as you pointed out very eloquently, you see him throw across his body and kind of make things happen when there's nothing there to happen. It really is a true progression to see where he was when he came in as a rookie and rookie minicamp, and now as a rookie on the precipice of coming up and making his choice now, or I should say the Patriots making the choice about whether or not he's going to be the starting quarterback to start the season. The Patriots have a tough decision here to make, no question.
Because what I saw was a kid who was using the arm talent to his advantage rather than pressing and putting himself in bad situations like so many young quarterbacks do, especially the ones that got cannons for arms. And,
absolutely.
And Gerard Mayo saw a potential starting quarterback. In fact, he said that to Mike Reese. He said, Drake Maye has outplayed Jacoby Brissett in this preseason. And look, we've all gotten to see that. We don't usually hear a coach say that, but we've all gotten to see that.
Right.
And so, Mike, we're looking at week 1 here. And we've seen Jacoby Brissett. I mean, last night was one drive, not much to take there, but didn't look good in that second game against the Eagles. And you're like, how are we going to have the head coach say that the kid has played better than Brissett, and they're both going against second-team defenses, and then we're going to see Brissett start week 1? Is that still the most likely scenario as you see it, Jacoby Brissett starting week 1?
Yeah, I think it is the most likely, and whether or not that is the correct course of action is going to be determined in due time. I'm not quite willing to go out on a limb and saying it's the right decision, but I think it will be the one that's made. Look, bottom line, I think Patriots fans have to remember that there is something to the theory of wanting to protect your starting quarterback and make sure that if he's playing along or behind a makeshift offensive line, that he's going to get protection that he needs, significant and basically consistent protection that he's going to need in order to be able to move forward. Now, there is also something to the argument. I'll play devil's advocate for a moment, Cam, and say that you also want to get this kid battle tested, get him out there, get him used to protecting himself. Quarterbacks are going to get hit, especially in the NFL. So what do you do to try to mitigate that? Well, if I'm an offensive coordinator, maybe I call less dropbacks. Maybe I max protect a little bit more. Maybe I'm calling the run and the hurry up offense a little bit more to get this kid where he needs to be. Try to protect him with the play callings rather than the personnel or the playing time. The adverse effect of that is you're dealing with a quarterback, again, like we said before, that's learning a new system, learning a new way to play quarterback as a pro, as opposed to what he did in college. North Carolina did that an awful lot. They masked an awful lot of the deficiencies around Drake with his unquestionable talent. In the NFL, it's a lot tougher to do that. So you have to be very sure that he's going to be ready, not just fundamentally ready, but also emotionally, mentally ready to be able to lead this club. I think Drake is as strong as they come, but at the same time, you also need to be mindful of the fact that outside interferences or outside circumstances can definitely affect it. That, I think, is what Gerard Mayo and the Patriots Brain Trust is struggling with so much right now. It's not whether Cam's ready to go. It's not whether Drake's ready to go.
I'm ready to go.
I'm
so ready.
Cam's ready to go. Cam is ready to get out there and do that. It's not whether Drake is ready to go. It's whether or not he's ready to go to lead this team. There is a difference.
And their hand might be forced in that Gerard Mayo said today as well. He said, well, last night it was Jacoby's fine. He could have kept going. He obviously got lit up on that sack on the first series. And now he's saying, well, Jacoby could come to me and say the shoulder's just not okay. And so that's now kind of left open a little bit. And the reason why Jacoby might not be okay is because the Patriots guards cannot kick out, and Sidy Sow takes out two of his own blockers that leads to this thunderous sack of Jacoby Brissett in the first quarter. This, I don't want to sound like a broken record, but this offensive line is not up to snub, and it looked like an absolute clown show out there last night against Washington. Is that the same read that you got?
100%. I mean, and I spent an awful lot of time trying to critique the top unit, not necessarily the backups, because you're going to have hiccups with the backups even late into the preseason. But that top unit needs to start operating as a top unit. And I know they were without David Andrews and without Vidarian Lowe, who's been their primary left tackle option for the last few days. But bottom line, when you're a top unit and you're committing 8 penalties, a bad shotgun snap to start it off, another botched quarterback exchange, that led to a problem. The blocking miscue where Brissett was sacked by Sidy Sow, you mentioned that as well. 4 of the 8 penalties were for incorrect alignment. 3 of those went on Chukwuma Okorafor, who right now is supposed to be your starting right tackle. He's playing on the left. You see the difference in the nuances in hand placement and body movement when it comes to playing on the right as opposed to the left. Yeah, this just was not good last night in any stretch of the imagination. And then when you've got your best lineman, Michael Wainu, getting whistled for an incorrect alignment as well, you've got problems along that line.
That was an unbelievable moment, by the way, when the ref, once again, illegal formation, the tackle is not lined up. It's like, oh my gosh. Like I know the preseason is to work some kinks out, but my God, that was a really tough watch. And you mentioned it. It's not the full number one. Obviously, David Andrews is going to be out there rather than Leverett, who had a really, really tough night. And I just, it feels like we have fallen so mightily when we have to say, oh, don't worry. This will be great when Vidarian Lowe comes back to play left tackle for you. It's just not. And I think we talked about this a few weeks ago. Is there anything the Patriots can do at this point? Like we saw what the tackle market was in the offseason. That's how you get Okorafor. And now, there's some positions where final roster cut downs, you can go and get someone. Kansas City can go get Juju Smith-Schuster because he was already cut. And he can probably play at the NFL level. I don't think you can go out there and get a tackle. I think you have a better chance of getting Dante Scarnecchia back, which I would love.
Dante Scarnecchia, our nation turns its lonely eyes to you. We really would love to see Dante back right there. But bottom line, there are options available. I think the Patriots will kick the tires. DJ Humphries is a name that keeps getting thrown around. Donovan Smith is still available. Who knows? He may be holding out for a big payday. Patriots may not have a choice but to shell out a little bit in order to protect their valuable asset in Drake May. But Gerard Mayo addressed that this morning as well, did say that the starting guard, the starting tackles on this team, one of the starters may not be on this roster right now. So I know that they're definitely going to be working the waiver wire, working the lines, seeing what's available. But again, I think you hit the nail right on the head, Cam. This is really a personnel issue. Should have been addressed long before now, but here we are in this situation. So what do you do moving forward, especially the fact that Sidy was in a walking boot leaving Washington last night? Chris Price of the Boston Globe was the one who reported that first. That's not a good sign. That's not necessarily an indictment on his ability to start the season, but at the same time, you have to be concerned about that. So now are you needy at guard as well as tackle? Yeah, this could get interesting in the next couple of days. The Patriots have a tough road ahead when it comes to figuring out this line.
And something to note for that, too, Caden Wallace doesn't come in until all the twos are in at that point in the second half. And that was, with all the mismatching we've seen, that was a little discouraging, at least from my standpoint. And looking at this roster, one of the ones we talked about, kind of one of the sexy positions we talked about a few weeks ago was running back. And how I like JaMychal Hasty. He had a good, solid game again. But Kevin Harris comes in with this touchdown. He looks like Dion Lewis, man. He's shaking guys off and making this great individual effort for a touchdown. Is it too little too late? Do you still have JaMychal Hasty making the spot over Kevin Harris, or has that done enough to swing your vote, Mike?
I wouldn't necessarily say it swung my vote. I think it added a vote, and I'm probably swinging away from another position. But
Gotcha.
I think the Patriots carry 4 running backs, especially if they're going to need to protect the quarterback and rely heavily on the running game because of the deficiencies in the offensive line. I think JaMychal Hasty has played his way onto this roster. I love the shiftiness and the dual threat capability. But Kevin Harris is a running back that just continues to do what's expected of him, and he does it well. He's a threat in the red zone. He's built very low to the ground, very strong in the legs and in the waist, and that's what you want in a red zone running back. But this kid proved that he's got the burst, the initial burst off the line of scrimmage to be able to make tacklers miss, and he did that last night, and you're going to continue to see him do that. I know the Patriots brass, especially under Bill Belichick, had so much faith and so much impressment by what they saw when it came to Kevin Harris. I really do believe that this regime and Alex Van Pelt is going to utilize him maybe in the same fashion, maybe even in a better fashion. So, yeah, I think it didn't do anything to lessen my thoughts about JaMychal Hasty making this roster, maybe even as running back 3. But I don't see after last night's performance how you keep Kevin Harris off this roster. I think they both get there.
All right, so if you're carrying 4 running backs, where are you taking from? Do you know that yet? Have you done the roster analysis yet for that?
Yeah, I would probably say that instead of carrying 7 or even 6 receivers, the Patriots may go with a little bit thinner of a group there, considering again the type of offense that they're going to have to run. Kayshon Boutte has been a guy that I have sung the praises of consistently on Locked On Patriots. I think he's been a very good receiver. I think he's a solid pro in the making. But when you're looking at the numbers crunch, he did not log any receptions last night, did get some playing time. That was a little disappointing. Tyquan Thornton's done enough to be able to earn a spot on this roster, and he's done everything the Patriots have asked him to do and more. So I like him as a member of this team now. And if you're coming down to either Boutte or Rager, I think you have to give Rager the slight edge because of what he gives you in the return game. So that may be where the Patriots take a number off. But, you know, there's a crowded defensive backfield. Maybe they carry one less corner, but I think you're going to need to go 4 strong at the running back position. And that's why I'm so adamant about both Hasty and Harris making this club.
And at receiver, you got to remember, too, you do have Kendrick Bourne on PUP. So one
Exactly.
of these guys, you know, mid-season or earlier than that even, you know, that could make for a pretty crowded room once again. But looking at we just looked at the roster there and looking towards that first game against Cincinnati, a lot to work out. I'm going to go back to the quarterback position a little bit here. A lot of time before that first game, and this is about the timeline we saw with Mac Jones. I think a lot of people forget that. He wasn't named the starter until a week before week 1, which would have been this break that we're in right now, and then Cam Newton was cut. So is it, I guess, you know, we talked about how surprising it would be if Drake Maye is the starter, but in terms of a timeline, it's not crazy that he would be announced as the starter between now and whatever, 5 or 6 days before the first game, right?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, there definitely is a chance. And again, going back to Gerard Mayo's words from this morning, this is a true competition. So I don't believe that anything is off the table right now. It is very eerily similar to a seasoned veteran coming in, expected to make the start. Everybody's getting, everybody's touting him as the starter heading in. And then all of a sudden the rookie comes in with a couple of great weeks proving that he can get the job done, and he does it moving forward. Again, there are mitigating circumstances that may end up derailing that. But bottom line, I really do believe that anything and everything is possible right now. If you're a Drake Maye fan and you want to see him week 1, I wouldn't say it's off the table by any stretch of the imagination. And a lot of the push he's made the last couple of weeks is a big reason why.
It does feel eerily similar to that 2021. The more I think about it, obviously different coach, but Gerard Mayo's only coached for Bill Belichick, so there's a lot of similarities there. And it was that same thing. Cam's the starter. Cam's got the NFL experience. Cam really demands the attention of the huddle, and the guys rally around him. And that's what we heard for months and months and months until we didn't anymore, until it was then Mac Jones's job. So very, very interesting to see how that plays out. Always love seeing Shaun Wade out there. I know he played a little bit last year, but it feels like seeing a ghost with how much. In fact, they said at one point in the broadcast, Mike, they were saying David Andrews is the second longest tenured Patriot on the team, and I couldn't think forever who the first one was, and there was a moment in my mind where I thought, is it Shaun Wade? There's no way, right? And it's not, but it was Joe Cardona, and I totally forgot.
Right.
And I was like, that makes sense. But I was like, Shaun Wade's been here like 5 years now. Like, this is an incredible run that he's had in terms of the years he's been here versus how much he's dressed. He's like another Ventrone, really, is what it comes down to. So we're now just under 2 weeks away from week one. That's Mike D'Abate of Locked On Patriots. I've now got the Locked On Patriots postcast, and it was not too happy last night. Once we got after the Drake Maye stuff, wasn't too happy last night. But Mike, I think we're gonna have to get you on closer to the season and hopefully break it down some games for us. We've said it time and time again, and I will stick with it. It is going to be an interesting year. I'm not going to say it's going to be a good year or a bad year or frustrating or whatever word you want to use. I'm just going to use interesting. Maybe intriguing. Sure, that works too. Mike, where can people find the podcast, and how often is it going out for the total Patriots coverage?
Absolutely. And first of all, thank you for the kind words, Cam, and definitely welcome to the Locked On family. You're a welcome addition. Already doing a great job, and you're going to continue to crush it and continue to knock it out of the park each and every time you take the microphone. So continue the great work, young man. You're doing awesome. If you want to catch my show, the Locked On Patriots podcast, each and every day, available wherever you get your podcasts, including YouTube, breaking down the Patriots' 20-10 loss to the Commanders. Today's show, and now we're going to focus on roster cutdowns as that Tuesday deadline comes closer. And then, of course, we're going to turn our attention to the Cincinnati Bengals. So each and every day this week, every weekday, check out Locked On Patriots. And if you want to check out my written work, you can do so at Patriots Country of Athlon Sports.
Mike, one of the very best in the business. Mike, thanks so much again for coming on. We will continue with the Cam Show next. We're talking that Steve McNair documentary, and it's not a pretty sight. That's coming up next on the Cam Show, brought to you by Rogue Media Sports Network. Cam Show, Rogue Media Sports Network. A lot of solo Cam today. I know you guys love that. And one thing that I am super into outside of sports, because I'm a nerd and don't like talking to people, is movies, documentaries, television even. And I watched the new Untold this weekend, the murder of Air McNair. And I got to tell you, just right off the bat, it might be the worst documentary I've ever seen. It's fucking terrible. So Untold is this Netflix series that they rolled out, I think, like during COVID, right after kind of the COVID lockdowns, that had some very interesting stories. In fact, the one that comes to mind is about the Danbury Trashers, the minor league hockey team that was owned by the mob, and the great stories that came out of that. It was like really entertaining. You know, it was untold. It was a story that a lot of people didn't know about. And here was this great, fan base, and this kid, this son of a mobster owning a hockey team. It was like an hour and a half. It was really good. And then they do like the Manti Te'o one. Okay, that was pretty good. Shed some new light on a story that was, huge 10 years ago, biggest story in America, and, was kind of seen through a new light and a more sympathetic light. I liked that. And then they just started kind of abandoning their name, Untold, because they do the Johnny Manziel one, and it was like, did you know Johnny Manziel was a big star in college? Got in some controversy, did some drugs. Okay, I watched that one and thought, well, that should be called Told. We knew that. And then, Swamp Kings, big 3-part, Urban Meyer. We're finally going to get to the bottom of this great Florida team that had all these convicts and Tim Tebow and Urban Meyer. Here we go. What are the stories we're going to get out of this? The whole thing was just, man, Urban Meyer's great. Florida was really good. They were good at winning football games. What the fuck, man? And it all culminates with the Steve McNair documentary, which I click on it on Friday when it came out, and I was surprised to see that it was not a couple episodes. This was a big story, big mystery when Steve McNair was murdered in 2009. And I was surprised to see it was 58 minutes long. It was just an episode. I was like, that's a lot to fit into 58 minutes. And one of the first people I see on my screen, like 5 minutes in, is Jeff Fisher. And I'm like, what are we doing here? And it was like Jeff Fisher telling the story about how he got his start, like playing for the '85 Bears and coaching under Buddy Ryan. And I'm like, what is this? What is this? Who is this documentary about? I'm here to find out the weird story behind the murder of Steve McNair, and I've got the fucking Jeff Fisher Wikipedia page rolling in front of my face. Very odd. And they talk about the downfall of the Oilers and the birth of the Titans, and it's like a 15-minute history just to say that Steve McNair was the first face of the Titans. I was like, that's a really weird way to go about this. And you get to the end of the 58 minutes, and you really don't learn anything. Documentaries are supposed to be thought-provoking and give you some sort of answers or at least a new perspective on things. We don't get any of that. Any of it. So the story was that Steve McNair was murdered by his 20-year-old girlfriend, and then she turned the gun on herself. That's the story we heard all the time for 15 years now since it happened. And what we got out of this documentary was, yeah, that's probably what happened. And they bring in the woman's ex-boyfriend for some reason. He provides nothing, just that he used to date her and that he liked Steve McNair as a player. That's a talking head that we could have completely done without. Same with Jeff Fisher. So there's two. They talk about this whole story about the Titans almost winning the Super Bowl, which is true, and Steve McNair was a big part of that. But again, really not what we care about in this documentary. Not at all. We already knew that. So those couple of Titans players, those were worthless. Then they bring in the guy who was Steve McNair's friend, who also stole money from him as a business associate, but had no other insight onto what could have happened in that condo. So that was completely worthless. Then they talk about a guy who sold the gun to the lady, by the way, 20-year-old that Steve McNair was dating, and it was like he lied to investigators about not knowing who this woman was that he sold the gun to, and he didn't want to say it in front of his fiance. Okay, did he kill Steve McNair? We don't get any answers to that. So that was worthless. And then they brought in this lawyer who was saying that the Nashville PD completely fucked up this investigation. They have no idea what happened, but couldn't pose a theory of his own. So that was worthless. Like literally nobody that talked in this documentary shed any light whatsoever on this. If you didn't know who Steve McNair, the football player, was, this was like a decent documentary for you. But I'm sure you could watch one better about Steve McNair's playing days. And we got no other theories, no real answers on his actual murder. It was so pointless. Like, who made this? This was the most told story ever to be on Untold. I was left so perplexed at the end of the hour. Like, I couldn't imagine. It's like when I'll do some Locked On Baylor episode in July, and I'm just going off of one tweet, and I have to talk about it for a half hour, and I just completely bullshit it. That's what it was like. We knew all the stuff that they laid out in there. It was like 10 minutes of people being like, man, I couldn't believe it was Steve McNair. Okay. And then it was another 10, 15 minutes of, God, Steve McNair was so good at football. And then a couple more minutes of, yeah, it was a crazy scene. We didn't know what happened at first, and then we found out what happened. And then that's it. Roll credits. We're done. It gave zero answers. So why? It's almost as if they started it a few months ago, and Netflix was like telling the producers, well, you've got to roll it out in August. Like, it's going out in August. So you just put together whatever you do. And that's what happened. And shout out to the Daily Mail, which is a British site that was just lambasting this documentary about, people wanting more out of this, because they do say at the end that our Adrian Gilliam, the guy who sold the gun, they kind of imply that he might have been more involved and then offer no theory as to why. But thank God we heard from Jeff Fisher and knew what Jeff Fisher's career was. The Steve McNair documentary was really just more confusing than it was informative, they say in the article. They're using tweets from fans. It's great. I watched the Untold Story about Steve McNair, and not surprisingly, they did an awful job with it. And then people were saying that people like involved in like the Nashville news scene at the time were saying, yeah, there was a ton that wasn't put in here. So not only did we not get any other perspective, not only did we not get any answers, but we didn't even get the full scope of what actually happened. I was thinking this was going to be a 3-part, let's dig into this. What are the unanswered questions here? Who could have been involved with this? How did this relationship deteriorate at the end? Because it was a crazy story, right? I don't even know if McNair was fully divorced yet, and he was dating this 20-year-old David Buster's waitress. Like, there's a lot there that we can get into, and it's almost like they thought that and then got into it, and like half the people they wanted to talk to wouldn't talk, and they couldn't get any information on the girl because she had really no family and she had emigrated. Like, that's what it screamed out to me, was that they just couldn't actually put together the information that they wanted to, and just said, well, all right, we'll do it anyway. It was so bad. It was so bad. Oh, so the Untold has hit rock bottom. It has been told and told poorly. It's not untold nor interesting. And I know they've got some more coming out, but that was really dumb. I wasted an hour of my life doing that. I very rarely say that after watching a sports documentary, because I'm a nerd. I live for this shit. But my God, that was terrible, and I had to rant on it. I'm sorry, I had to. Another thing media-wise that I had a problem with, and this goes back to the Patriots. I know I've talked Patriots most of the show, that there was a moment in the game where Mike Tirico is talking with Chris Collinsworth. They're doing a whole Sunday night broadcast. I think it's the only one they do in the preseason. And they're throwing out ideas, which I love, but they were saying, the product in preseason is just unwatchable. Like, we can't go on like this. And I'm like, well, why not? Like, the product of preseason football, at the end of the day, is not for us. That's why they're not shown on national TV a lot of the time. Like 2 or 3 games of the whole preseason are done on that. That's why the product isn't for us. Like, I'm obviously a huge fan. I watch it, and I always love for our products to be as best as they can be, but they're practice games. They're not for us. They're for the coaches and for the GMs. They aren't for the fans to watch on TV. As much as you might not like to hear that, that's not what this is for. And that's why, by the way, coaches are going more towards joint practices, where ones can go against ones in a practice setting, and it actually has value to them, because the preseason games really don't have a lot of value to them. So I just thought that was funny. Like, oh, we need to get this better for the fan. Like, no, we don't. No, we don't. You don't need to put preseason games over in London either. Like, we're okay. And I think most football fans are okay with watching some shitty football in the preseason, because there but for the grace of God go I. I know what I'm getting into when I'm watching preseason football, and then by week 1, it's going to be just fine. That's not what they should worry about. And the NFL solution is, let's add an 18th game, which is also fucking stupid. Again, there is a time where we need to know that too much is too much. It's the same thing with the proposed expansion of the NCAA tournament. And as soon as the college football went to a 12-game playoff, they started talking about 16. Like, no, 12 is fine. 68 in basketball is fine. 16 in football was great. It was perfect. You add a 17th, now we're really pushing it. 18th, what are we doing, man? Anyway, that's my sports and media take of the week. And thank you for tuning into the Cam Show, powered by Rogue Media Sports Network. We're going to be back tomorrow, and we're going to talk about stuff. I guarantee you that. So be sure to like and subscribe. Hit that notification bell on YouTube. You'll also find us wherever you get your podcasts for free. We're also going to drop in the description the voicemail. Give us a call. Let me know what you think about me, what you hate about me, what you love about me. No, don't do the love one. What you hate about me and the show. Call us up. Tell us what you want to hear about in terms of the Boston sports scene, or in this case, the media sports scene as well. But that is the Cam Show, powered by Rogue Media Sports Network. We're going to see you tomorrow.
We are Rogue Media Sports.